Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Today, we're going to visit one of my favorite real estate markets. We'll talk with an operator there that is so successful and different that other companies actually study them, and our listeners have loved them for almost 10 years now. Today on Get Rich Education.
Since 2014, the powerful Get Rich Education podcast has created more passive income for people than nearly any other show in the world. This show teaches you how to earn strong returns from passive real estate investing in the best markets without losing your time being a flipper or landlord. Show host Keith Weinhold writes for both Forbes and Rich Dad Advisors and delivers a new show every week. Since 2014, there's been millions of listener downloads in 188 world nations. He has A-list show guests include top-selling personal finance author Robert Kiyosaki. Get Rich Education can be heard on every podcast platform, plus it has its own dedicated Apple and Android listener phone apps. Build wealth on the go with the Get Rich Education podcast. Sign up now for the Get Rich Education podcast or visit GetRichEducation.com.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE. From Sandy Creek, New York to Walnut Creek, California, and across 188 nations worldwide, I'm Keith Weinhold, and this is Get Rich Education. Some call Memphis, Tennessee the best place in the entire United States for income-producing homes. And in past shows, we've talked about all of those reasons on why that's true. The economic, the geographic, and the cultural. So all that I will add to that is, did trends like the era of COVID and this nascency of AI, did that change the advantageous Memphis economics over these past, 3 to 5 years? No, not really, because this distribution hub market, air, barge, rail, and truck, is still really the center of the most powerful nation on earth when it comes to distribution. If you're moving a package from New York to LA, you're going through Memphis. The reason that really matters is that those distribution jobs are not transient. It's tough to outsource that activity to Thailand. Lots of things make Memphis well known. Memphis barbecue, Beale Street, Graceland, Elvis, the birthplace of both rock and roll music and blues music, the Mississippi River, the Fedex hub. What we're doing today is going deep inside an enormously successful real estate group there in Memphis. They provide properties to investors. This is going to get rather interesting because there are just so many things that make them different. Things they do that no one else that I know of does in the industry. In fact, during our discussion, if you miss any of these differentiators, I'll summarize them for you at the end today. Other companies study these people. For example, their properties are totally viewable by the public. You can easily see them, physical address, pro forma, and everything right there on their website. It's just one of a number of things that makes you say, gosh, why don't more people do things the same way that these people do? Now, when I visited Memphis with today's guests, we looked at properties in all different construction stages. At one, there was a giant pile of junk all over the backyard, and that is exactly according to their plan, because we were touring a property mid-rehab, and they don't put a dumpster out on the street like everyone else does. Why is that? Because renting a dumpster is costly, and it makes the neighborhood look blighted for a while. They just put all the refuse in the backyard and come by and have a junk collection day for their properties later. And then oppositely, I also saw their beautifully finished homes where the real hardwood floors shined so much that I wondered when I could move in myself. Now, when you add a property to your real estate portfolio, you can do things like get a property inspection and check out that property today, and maybe even learn about your tenant before you buy a property. But one thing that you don't know is what kind of tenant could this property attract in 5 years? Well, in Memphis, as you'll see, it is a complete renter culture there. In fact, with the provider that we're about to talk with today, when I visited Memphis, and this was quite a while ago, I was driving around with them and they were showing me their sample properties, and I asked them about appreciation in the areas where they buy. I asked, what about appreciation? And they began talking about rents. They thought that I meant rent appreciation. No, that's not the way that I talk. Appreciation means capital price to me, but that fact right there is just indicative of the renter culture that they have there. Let's learn more about it and take a trip to Memphis. Today, it's like the return of two longtime terrific friends. It's Terry Kerr and Liz Brody from Mid-South Homebuyers in Memphis. Welcome in.
Hi, Keith.
Hey, Keith. Thanks so much for having us again.
Always love to be here.
Oh, yeah. Now, I've never heard sticks, bricks, and mortar talk, but if they could, they would probably sound like you two. And that's because you really are the figurative voice of properties that so many of our followers, probably hundreds now, have bought over the years. So I just think it's reassuring for us to hear your voice here on GRE every couple years. And Terry, this really all began with you 22 years ago. You found that you simply enjoyed fixing up houses. Then you found that others liked your ability to renovate property for them. And then you began doing it at scale, placing tenants, starting your own warehouse, which I was inside when it was new. You brought in property management and more. And now that you lead a team that's done thousands of rehab properties and you've even added new build, we'll get to that later, you're still Memphis-based, but 6 years ago, you branched out to Little Rock, Arkansas, 2 hours to the west. But with all that, Terry, back from the start, when you began rehabbing Memphis houses, at what point did you learn the fact that, now you just happen to be from an investor advantage city where you get high rents in proportion to a low purchase price? Like, when did that epiphany occur?
I tell you what, I'm the luckiest guy I know. I was born in the right city at the right time and was able to cultivate an incredible team of pros to help me run this business. Obviously, Liz has been here for 15 years, running and gunning with me. But I would say when I realized that we were super fortunate to be in Memphis, Tennessee, with all the awesomeness that it provides for cash flow, it was probably right in the middle of the credit crisis when it became real obvious that even though there was, blood in the street, if you will, there was a ton of opportunity. And it came from a buddy of mine who had about 10 houses that he had fixed up himself and was managing, and he started buying from us. And I asked him why, and he said, because it's the leverage of time. I can buy them from you already fixed up for the same price that I will have in it, if not more, when I'm spending my own time. And that's when really and truly the idea became crystal clear that passing bargains on to bargain hunters was where we were going to focus.
You surely found your niche, and in being from Memphis and finding that right niche and finding the right properties, most people find in that sense that buying super cheap homes looks attractive on the surface to go fix up, but it often doesn't work because you're in blighted neighborhoods. And then on the opposite end, you don't want to go too high end because the rents really aren't that good for the higher purchase price. And both Terry and Liz, you can feel free to chime in on this, but let's talk about the formation then of your go zone versus your no-go zone. So we're really talking about sweet spot discovery here.
I always kind of love your origin story a little bit as far as maybe buying a little bit too low,
right?
Feeling the pain, having to protect the materials you were putting in the renovation, overcorrecting, swinging up to the pretty stuff that kind of sounds nice at the cocktail party, but shelling out a bunch of money for very little return has never made sense. I have a lot that I prefer about working class renters over A-class renters, if you will, for so many reasons. They stay longer. It costs money to move. A-class renters are more litigious. They're going to go be home buyers. It's a lot. If you're paying tip-top rent, you're going to call in a work order because your door handle is loose. And at the end of the day, the lower your rent is, the more people can afford your property. You want to talk about being recession-proof. Being in that working class area really, really helps. So there's a lot to it.
There is. And as of this morning, our occupancy rate was 99.17. It'll dip down into the mid 98s around the holidays. Liz, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you want to operate in the zone where you can have the highest occupancy rate. And although A-class properties, they look nice, but folks don't stay long because they're more transient. They end up buying a home for themselves. So in the beginning, we did things the wrong way a lot, and we, scraped our toes and scuffed our knees, and we're just fortunate that we were able to figure it out and then work it to scale.
And another thing I think that is really neat and powerful about our roots as a company that I always love is so Terry, realizing that he wanted to, pass on bargains to bargain hunters, he'd been buying and creating these homes for himself. You were building your own rental property portfolio as people do, but there was a doctor that we had sold a number of houses to, but Terry was not managing them. And they were out at dinner and they were comparing notes, and Terry's properties were outperforming the doctor's, and they were identical. They were identical rehabs, identical everything. And the difference was Terry's management. Doctor said, I'm not going to buy any more houses from you unless you will manage my properties too. And you'd known the day was coming. He'd been thinking about it anyway. But we had a property management company. It just managed Terry's properties. And so much about how we manage properties, and that really is feeding into that 99% occupancy rate, came because Terry designed his property management company as an owner. One thing we've talked on about here before is how we don't charge application fees to renters. That's because when Terry was standing in the front yard of a house that he had spent his life savings, his nights and weekends renovating, he didn't care about $50 an adult head from an application fee. He wanted to get the best human being possible in his home. And to this day, we are the only property management company I know of, coast to coast, that is a no application fee at all times company, not upcharging maintenance, not upcharging materials. There's so much that is unique about how our property management company operates because Terry didn't say, I'm going to manage your properties differently than I manage my own. I just think that's a really important foundational forming sort of a factor for how we manage.
You do so many things differently there that you're really interesting to study. And your primary business is renovating homes and selling them to investors like me and our followers that want to hold them with a tenant in it for the long-term production of income and leverage and all of that. The neighborhood, it wouldn't matter to you as much probably if you're just doing in and out fix and flips where you don't have any future ongoing relationship with that buyer of your rehabbed property. Therefore, in that case, you would have less neighborhood concern. But now, of course, the neighborhood, it really matters to you because you are managing what you sell.
Absolutely. And that's why not only is it the neighborhood that matters in managing what we sell, but it's also why we like to buy the houses that are in the worst condition, because the worst condition of property is when you buy it, the more things you can replace, right? And so we're proud of the fact that we're taking the ugliest house on a street that was owned by a local investor who maybe bought it 30 or 40 years ago, managed it his or herself, retired, and is then at a point in their life where they want to sell it. Typically, there's tons of deferred maintenance, and we're proud to be able to buy those houses and pay a little more than the market because we have honed our skills at taking these houses that are in super bad shape and bringing them all the way up to the best house on the street.
And Keith, you hit the nail on the head. We're not just walking away. Our acquisitions team actually passes on about 25 houses for every one that we put an offer in. You can actually look at our inventory on our website. And so when you go to the available property section of Mid-South Home Buyers, those 50 or 60 houses you're seeing, each one jumped through 50 or 60 hoops to become a Mid-South Home Buyers house. One thing I always tell folks is, as you know, Keith, we have a short wait list for our properties, but my acquisitions team is not out there thinking about me and my wait list. It is actually a mandate from Terry that we do not pass on a property to an investor that he would not proudly own in his own portfolio. And no one wants to manage a problem property. Nobody wants to manage a property in a neighborhood that can't attract a quality renter. If you get approved with our property management company, that means you would be approved anywhere in town within the limits of your income. That's a way of stating essentially that our renters have choices and options about where they live. People with choices and options don't put their families in unsafe neighborhoods, let alone environmental factors, being close to a corner store that gets too much foot traffic, highway noise, just little things like that. And we're built on repeat and referred business. And frankly, our profit margins are really slim per house. So there's just no reason to buy a house that is less than and risk a repeat buyer and risk a problem, something that's harder to manage.
Yeah, so we're talking often about rehab single-family homes here. Your price points seem to be between $95K and $160K for that. And sometimes you have duplexes and other more expensive properties. And these are good houses in pride of ownership neighborhoods that I have been inside with each of you. So that's what we're talking about here. But you touched on another differentiator there, Liz, something that makes you guys different. And that's the fact that you do publicly put your physical addresses out there for anyone just to see easily on your website. That's something that a lot of companies don't do. Can you tell us why that is? Why do you make this so publicly available and that few others do?
So our philosophy has just been, we want to be the easy folks to work with, whether it's our investor partners, our bankers, contractors, subcontractors, internal employees, closing attorneys, whatever it is. And so we also wanted to make it easy for folks to learn about how to shop for a turnkey seller in any market, whether it's us or anywhere in the U.S. And we want to make it easy for folks to go in and check out our properties, see what we have under contract to sell, and use those properties kind of as a litmus test to kind of get used to what's going to be coming down the pipe for them if they hop on the wait list. So we don't want to make our potential investor partners jump through hoops so we can grab their email address and give them the hard sell. We pride ourselves on being able to communicate what a turnkey seller can do to provide value and operate from an educational standpoint. And in the same vein, it's the same reason, like Liz was mentioning, that although we do all the same background checks, credit checks, employment verification, we don't charge our residents for that. And it's the same way, like when we sell houses, we do not require earnest money. So someone puts a house under contract with us, we've never required any earnest money, and someone can cancel for any time for any reason, because if life happens to someone during the contract process, we are not going to hold their feet to the fire. And one other little example of us really working hard to be easy to work with is property management. Most property management companies, you sign a contract and you're locked in for this period of time. If something happens to someone for some reason, and they have to put their parents into a nursing home, or their kid gets into a college that's really expensive and they need to sell, or whatever it is, there's no, you're locked into a contract. So we're just looking to be easy to work with and operate from an educational standpoint.
I want you to be popping champagne at the closing table or confetti if you don't drink. If the wind changed directions for any reason, if you want to take it to Vegas, we understand one of the fun things about our business model is the house is cash flow for us as well. They really do make money. And so we're able to approach it from that. And personally, as I educate folks about us, Mid-South is one of the most formulaic businesses that, especially in real estate, where there's such a wide variety of things that I have ever encountered. Almost going back to acquisitions and how picky we are on the houses and how they have to jump through so many hoops. One thing I like to tell investors, as many people know, I buy directly from the company. I pay full price. There's no employee discount on a house. I pay 10% management until I got to a portfolio size and so on. And what I tell folks is when I get my down payment saved up, I'm ready to buy my next Mid-South house. Keith, I've found that house in 3 to 4 weeks because there's nothing to hold out for. There's nothing to wait and see. There's not that one special deal. And so going back to the houses being all on the website, so there's kind of a two-pronged thing there. So our leasing team, we often take a deposit from a renter before we're even done with the rehab. Just like we get a lot of investor referrals, we get a lot of renter referrals. We are the only turnkey that I'm aware of, as an example, that does all new kitchen cabinets every single time. Nothing wrong with painted cabinets. I've lived in houses with painted cabinets, but we all know kitchens and baths rent houses and they sell houses. Right. And just like my leasing team is showing these renters the all new tile shower surround, the all new kitchen, I am able to show investors, since we're grateful to have more investors in houses, and we do have kind of that short, maybe 90-day wait time before they can get houses. I say, jump on our website, have a pretend shopping trip, pretend every one of those houses is available today, and you're going to write a check today. And the 4 or 5 that you kind of start to identify as ticking your boxes, if you're like in 320 Maple Street today, I am going to have 490 Maple Street for you. Same zip code, same cash flow, same price to rent relationship. And that means it makes sense for you to join our short wait list because you're going to see that same thing. And so it's very helpful. And I think most other people's approach, and there's nothing wrong with this, but you're going to have our friendly competition. There might be a 5-year-old water heater and a 20-year-old roof. And this house has a new water heater, but an even older roof. And the price and the rent relationships are kind of all over the map. And they'll say, well, it's because of area and this and that. And again, back to me being able to pick out my Mid-South house within about 3 weeks of having decided I'm going to do it. And I know this isn't very scientific. I go on like trying to curb appeal within my price range because Mid-South has hammered out every other flaw and they get so interchangeable. And so having all of our properties, even though they're under contract to investors at the top of the wait list, available where everyone can come and see that is so helpful.
Yeah, because of course it's about making the right upgrades when it's going to be a rental property. Words like opulence and extravagance really don't make a lot of sense here. I mean, adding a wine cellar with mahogany finishes and marble floors might boost the price $40K. And not only would you over-improve the neighborhood, but your target tenant, they might only pay $25 more per month for that. So it's about making those right upgrades like you touched on.
I always say every dollar we spend is either to defer maintenance or to attract another dollar in rent. And if it doesn't check those 2 boxes, it doesn't make sense. So an example would be if you were going to sell something retail to an owner occupant, maybe an 8-foot wooden cedar privacy fence might make sense. For a rental property over a chain link, it does not get you $1 and that wood's going to rot and so on. And so that's our approach on everything. Yep. There is money you can spend that does attract another dollar in rent, and that's when we spend it.
Now, there's something really interesting going on in you guys' geography, both in Memphis and out in Little Rock. When we talk about those physical amenities inside a property, and that is with appliances. Rental demand in Memphis and Little Rock is so high that tenants bring their own appliances. Tell us about that.
Actually, Little Rock is more like the rest of the country. It's one of the things that I kind of use that website for. So it's one of the few differences you'll see between our houses is that if you're looking at the kitchens and the Memphis houses, there's no appliances. If you're looking at the kitchens in our new construction properties, because it's at a rent point where that kicks in our Little Rock properties, you're going to see brand new black or stainless steel GE Whirlpool appliances in there. But about 80% of our inventory is going to be renovated properties in Memphis where you will not see those appliances. And as Terry knows, I came to him 15 years ago from a different market and about 10 years in property management. And he casually and calmly told me to remind the renters to bring their own appliances. I had come in for him on the leasing side. And I thought, I'm working for a lunatic. I'm about to get laughed off the phone. Oh my gosh. I'd been there a week. I was like, oh man, what are we doing? And literally the first Mrs. Smith, if you will, that I spoke to on the phone, I kind of softly whispered with trepidation for the backlash, don't forget to bring your appliances. And she was like, oh yeah, of course. And she actually paused and said, they're not in there, right? There's nothing in there. Because she owned her own appliances. Our average renter is coming to us from another single family home. One of our many rules is you have to have paid rent yesterday. We want, a lot of folks will take 2 years landlord history, and it's okay if you lived with your mom for a year. There's a lot of ways that our criteria is just a little bit more stringent. Our typical renter is coming to us from another single family home. They have a lawnmower, they own their stove, they own their fridge, then they own their washer dryer, and it is just a subtle perk. You don't repair them, you don't replace them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm a geographer. I often think about and love maps. Maybe I need to do some research and make a range map of where tenants travel with appliances. Does that happen up in Missouri or out in Oklahoma, or just where do the limits of that map end? You're listening to Get Rich Education. We're talking with the voices of Mid-South homebuyers, Terry, Kerr, and Liz Brody. More when we come back. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. For a lender that's a specific expert with income property, you need Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. In GRE history, from beginners to veterans, they provided our listeners with more mortgages than anyone. It's where I get my own loans for single-family rentals up to fourplexes. Start your pre-qualification and chat with President Chaley Ridge personally. They'll even customize a plan tailored to you for growing your portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com, ridgelendinggroup.com. You know, I'll just tell you, for the most passive part of my real estate investing, personally, I put my own dollars with Freedom Family Investments because their funds pay me a stream of regular cash flow, and returns are better than a bank savings account, up to 12%. Their minimums are as low as $25K. You don't even need to be accredited for some of them. It's all backed by real estate, and I kind of love how the tax benefit of doing this can offset capital gains and your W-2 job's income. And they've always given me exactly their stated return, paid on time. So it's steady income, no surprises, while I'm sleeping or just doing the things I love. For a little insider tip, I've invested in their Power Fund. To get going on that, text family to 66866. Oh, and this isn't a solicitation. If you want to invest where I do, just go ahead and text family to 66866.
This is Rick Sharga, Housing Market Intelligence Analyst. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold, and don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're talking with Kerr and Liz Brody of Mid-South Home Buyers based in Memphis, Tennessee. Because they do so much volume and through their operational efficiencies like they've been describing, you can see why it's attractive to both tenants and investors. If a tenant can pay the same rent or 3% less rent and get a 12% better property, that's why they have such high occupancy. And although your bread and butter and sort of where you started out is doing renovated properties in Memphis, you've joined in and really helped give the nation what they need, and that is new build property to help deal with the national housing shortage. So can you tell us more about what you're doing with new build?
We heard from our investors for a long time, and we found out very quickly that residents also like the new construction direct to rental. In typical fashion, we stuck our toe in, we made sure our foundation was built and we were ready to handle it. And we slowly but surely started doing new construction in Little Rock with just small developments, one 30-unit development, another 30-unit development with lots of scattered lot. And now in Memphis, we're doing the same thing. And we have got, Liz, 12, 15 going right now, new construction going in Memphis. And we are definitely continuing with our bread and butter rehabs, but we're really happy to be able to offer new construction, direct to rental properties that are built specifically for rental, with 10-year transferable slab warranties, PEX plumbing, HIP roofs, the whole 9 yards, just to make them just darn near maintenance-free on the exterior. And they are just flying off the shelf with renters and investors alike.
It's been just fantastic. You can see them on our website. They have a special new construction label, and we have a really cool IRR calculation on the website, and we have turned up the appreciation ratio for the new construction. It's the only way any house is calculated any differently than any other house. And I think there's just a really neat value to that, in that when that investor is going to go sell that house for a profit in 15, 20 years, though plenty of folks are leaving them to their kids, and this applies as well. You're selling a 15-year-old house. That's kind of cool. It's just been really neat. And one of the best things, Keith, I know you know, that our wait times had gotten, and we are grateful because we were doing over 400 houses a year, but at one point our wait times were over a year.
We're talking about your investor wait list.
Investor wait time. Thank you. Yes. The amount of time, if someone called me and wanted a house today, that they would have to wait, as I got houses to everyone ahead of them in line. Well, we now have a faucet, and it's the new construction faucet, and we can turn it on. And that additional, I believe we probably done an extra 70 houses in the last 12 months from new construction, has our wait times down to 90 days or so for a financed investor, and about 45 on a cash buyer side, 45 days. And so we're just thrilled. We're able to work with folks doing 1031s in a way we never have before. And it's just great to be able to kind of meet some of that demand.
And you really get in there and work closely with investors that have 1031 exchange timelines to beat. And you can more easily do that now with that increased faucet flow with your new build.
Absolutely. I love it. And so because for so many years, and we've always been so grateful for the demand, but I got calls. I'm selling $1 million property in California. I'm selling a $2 million property in New York. And I have so much funds to disperse with you. And while it is still just one at a time for finance buyers, though I've been doing case-by-case exceptions for that. And for Get Rich Education listeners, I want to make that as just a permanent exception that they can do 2 financed properties at a time.
Great.
And then cash folks can do 3 at a time. But then we are now able to have a 1031 program where if you reach out to me and we're going to discuss the date of the sale of your subject property, what your needs are, that way I can make sure my wait times that I'm quoting to other investors are accurate. We're going to make sure you're meeting your 45-day timeline. As you might know, you could identify actually before the subject property is sold, which I find some people don't know. We're able to, even with all the demand for our properties, help people avoid those taxes and do the 1031s.
The tax-deferred exchange for people with all the accumulated equity in the COVID run-up. And just real quickly, of course, this is going to change if you're listening to this 5 years or even 1 year into the future, but what are the interest rates on the buy-downs that you're doing on the new build properties for the investor?
So that's one of the coolest things. And I really think Fannie and Freddie, that they're doing this right. As you know, Keith, and as you talk about, there is a housing shortage. Nobody loves higher interest rates, but they cooled the market, I think, in the way that they wanted to, but they're still encouraging new construction. And so we are able to do, it's called a forward commitment, but we pre-buy down the rate for the investor. And as people deep in real estate may know, the sellers can only contribute 2% of the purchase price to a buyer's closing cost. So your average buyer can only buy their rate down X amount. What we're doing is buying it down ahead of time on these new construction properties, and you still have all the range to buy it down more on top of what we've done. So that really is a big difference. And so right now on our new construction properties, folks can get as low as 5.75.
That's really attractive.
Yeah, and it's really great. You walk in the door at 6.3. I see folks out there running their numbers at 8%, and it's really fun to tell them, oh, no, half that. So yeah, it's been wonderful.
That's really some of the best news. Well, the two of you have always done things differently. You've been really fairly innovative in a number of ways, in my perspective. In fact, when I visited your office back in 2015, I still remember when you had the electronic status board of your properties up there. This is at a time when most companies were using a whiteboard and a dry erase marker and all that. So you're always engineering in efficiencies to the things that you do. In winding down here, tell us a little bit more, including the investor tours that you offer so often because you're so proud of what you've got there.
Liz rolls around any investor who wants to come visit with us once a month. We have a tour. We've got a Sprinter van that we roll around lately. The Sprinter van that holds 12 has not been doing it, so we've had to rent another van. But Liz tours folks around. She shows them our facility, introduces them to some of our team members, and then goes and shows them a before, a during rehab, and a finished rehab so they can see everything during the process, and just really rolls out so folks can see a visual of exactly how we do and why we do it.
Yeah, it's so much fun. So about 95% of our investors have never set foot in Memphis or Little Rock. If your goal is to do it from your living room, have no fear. We are set up for you to do everything from your living room, but it will push your confidence through the roof to come out. I can't tell you what a happy, chill vibe our office has. Terry happens to be an amazing guy to work for. We have a lot of long-term employees. I've been with him 15 years, but you'll meet Naya that's been with us for 10 years. Matt, our property manager, he's been with us for 12. Naya is kind of the me on the other end of closing. Even your renters actually hear a smiling voice within 2 rings that's a leasing agent that's been with us for 8-9 years. You're going to get to meet those folks. You're going to get to see the warehouse. I'm no CPA, but for most people, that trip's going to be a tax write-off. But we're also going to give you $500 towards your closing cost on your first house as a thank you for coming out. particularly, Keith, I love it because so many of our investors are from high cost of living areas where you cannot get renovated house in a peaceful neighborhood for $150,000. And I just love, the birds are chirping. There's no foot traffic. It's just quiet because that whole neighborhood's at work and there's no trash and there's no graffiti. Not to mention letting folks bang on the cabinets and kick the tires, so to speak. And so if people are listening to this when our new website is up, there will be a full tour list for the rest of the year available online. If they're listening to this when it comes out, they can reach out to me for the next dates, but we'd love to sign them up.
If you'd like, you can fly in on a Thursday. The tours are Fridays, and I took a look. The upcoming tours are May 17th, June 28th, and July 12th, but you can see how often they're doing them there. Terry and Liz, rarely if ever have I heard bricks and mortar have so much personality and come with such liveliness. Amazing that this happened here. Tell us any last thoughts and then how our listeners can learn more about you.
For last thoughts, I think what I want to tell people is that if you feel intimidated about investing, if you feel like there is jargon, if lending is confusing to you, please don't hesitate to reach out and jump on the phone with us. We have incredibly experienced investors that own hundreds of apartment buildings, but one of my favorite things is to just help a first-time investor get their feet under them. I understand the nerves and the butterflies that can come with it. I know how hard people work to save up these down payments, and we are there for you for the questions, the granular questions, and it's okay if you're really new. I have helped folks in LA and New York that are renters, and this is actually their first home purchase because literally buying anything in their local market is $2 million. And so if you have never bought a house before, please don't feel intimidated to email or to call because we've got you and you're going to plug into, man, I've been vetting the best lenders for 15 years, title companies, insurance, and the way that we keep our finger on the pulse of who's giving the best service, who's giving the best cost for even just the rest of the team that's going to get you closed is that. And then for how to find us, midsouthhomebuyers.com. And I am Liz Liz for anyone that wants to give us a shout that way. Quick side note, there is a video on the homepage of our website, and that's true whether you're seeing the one that's out right now or the one we've got coming, but it is a video version of that tour. You can see our warehouse, you can see our offices, you're going to see houses in some different stages. We actually one of our investors was like, you should put a GoPro helmet on your head for this tour, and that's about what we did. And so for those of you that may not be able to come right now, check out that video. As we mentioned, go look at the houses, go look at the kitchens, go look at everything, and let us know.
Well, this has been amazing to hear a new piece of Terry's origin story. And then I think you, the listener, can feel the passion and the willingness to help in Liz's voice. It's exactly what she expertly does. Terry and Liz, this is great having you back on the show.
Thanks so much, Keith.
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, such uniqueness there. Elucidation from Terry and Liz. Now, in real estate, you hear the term buyer's market and seller's market. Well, Memphis is a landlord's market. When it comes to tenants traveling with appliances, in talking with Liz some more, it's because as this vibrant tenant and renter culture has evolved, landlords really haven't had to compete with each other. That's why that is. Getting a little anthropogenic here. Here are some of the attributes that make Mid-South different, perhaps even unique. There's no tenant application fees, so they get a greater renter pool. They don't mark up maintenance and materials. They put addresses of their properties on their website, like we mentioned. They don't require investor earnest money. Investors can cancel for any reason, and tenants bring their own appliances. Those are some differentiators, and there are more. I mean, the tenant has a favorite Maytag dishwasher or Whirlpool refrigerator. Well, the tenant might very well use that in more than one home during their lifetime. We didn't talk numbers much today, but again, you can see the properties on their website. You can come on in with your rate currently bought down to 5.75% on their new builds. And that's really kind of about what they will do for you. Now, the GRE listener, it used to be that after you made it to the top of the investor wait list, you could buy one property and then you'd have to go back on the bottom of their wait list in order to get your next one. But no longer. For you, the GRE listener, you can reserve 2 finance properties at a time and 3 at a time cash. You can get started at MidSouthHomebuyers.com. Until next week, when I'll be back with episode 500, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.